Good afternoon and welcome to Sahara Reporters and SaharaTV. We have our guest today, Beatrice Mtetwa. Beatrice Mtetwa is actually a Zimbabwe human rights lawyer who just got released from prison on Monday. She had been locked up for 7 days in Zimbabwe. That was after the referendum votes that Zimbabwe had gone through, and she had actually been requested by MDC to represent 4 of its members who had been locked up. And during that encounter with the police, she was charged with obstruction of justice. So Beatrice is joining us via telephone from Harare. Beatrice, hello and welcome to Sahara TV.
Hi, and thank you for inviting me to speak on your program.
Thank you. We're going to take a minute just to watch a clip of a video that we have of you. So please hang on with us.
Unlike a lot of other dictators, Robert Mugabe doesn't just go out and do what he wants. He first goes to parliament and passes a law and says it is now legal to punch somebody in the nose. And if you say, hey, you can't do that, he says that is the law.
A video, in fact, some film that was made on behalf of Beatrice. We're going to talk about that later. So Beatrice, can you explain to us why you were locked up?
Well, as you have explained to your viewers, I was called to a scene where the police were searching at the residence of an employee of the MDC. And when I got there and I asked for the search warrant, the policeman said, oh, we'll give it to you at the station. And I said, of course, I need the warrant now so that I am able to determine that you are lawfully executing a search. And really, it was quite clear that they didn't have a search for his premises. And I suspect in order to get me out of the way so that they could finish with their search, I then got arrested for obstructing the police.
Okay.
Basically, as far as I'm concerned, I was arrested for doing my job, but the police at court said that I had shouted at them and I had said, what you're doing is illegal and unconstitutional, and that constitutes obstructing the police in the execution of their duties.
Okay, can you tell us the procedure normally, what happens when somebody is actually being searched, and then also what happens when somebody is being arrested? What's the procedure, standard procedure, the lawful procedure?
Procedure is that the police have to go to an authority where they justify the issuance of a search warrant. They do this routinely. In fact, the same cops about a month earlier had gone to search at a different organization's premises. And when I was called there, they showed me the warrant, and the search was conducted nicely. We made an inventory of what they were taking, and it was a legal search. So you need to have that warrant signed by an appropriate authority. It tells you the address of the place where the search has to be conducted and what it is that the police will be looking for. And that is what tells the lawyer whether or not the search is lawful. And that really is what I wanted when I got to the premises. And that is what they were not able to give me then, and they've not been able to produce it at any of the court proceedings that we've had so far.
Okay, now going back to your case, after somebody has been locked up, how long does it take before you can be released on bail or actually appear in court?
Well, the police have 48 hours within which to take one to court. But, I mean, if they are ready to take you to court earlier, there's no law that bars that. In special circumstances, they can motivate for your being kept for a maximum of 96 hours, which means they must go and get a warrant of further detention by justifying why they need that extra time. So the maximum they can lawfully hold you for is 96 hours. But if they've been able to motivate why they should hold you beyond the initial 48 hours.
Okay, now you were locked up for 7 days, and at one point you were actually granted bail and then sent back to prison. What was happening at that point, if we may ask?
Well, what actually happened is that on the day of my arrest, the lawyers were able to immediately go to court to demonstrate to a judge that I was just discharging my duties as a lawyer and that there was no reasonable suspicion that I committed any offense and that therefore there was no basis for me being arrested. And the judge granted them that order for my immediate release. But the authorities ignored that order. They have ignored it completely throughout.
Okay. Now, Zimbabwe has a record of human rights abuses, and of late, and also judging from the past elections, that is in 2008, I think, a lot of civic society and human rights activists had been locked up, and this has been happening just before the referendum elections that happened just at the time of your being locked up. Can you explain to us why you think this happens and why these people are targeted?
Well, the view I take is that with the upcoming elections, obviously they want to put the fear of God in all of us, so that as and when the elections come, we are all cowed and we don't do our job. Basically, there's no other explanation for it because, as I said to you, I was with the same police only about a month ago and they behaved impeccably. They gave me the warrant, and by arresting me at a search scene when I was executing my duties, for me, it's meant to say to all other human rights defenders, this is what will happen to you if you interfere with what we want to do. So for me, it's meant to cow human rights defenders into not doing what they are supposed to do.
Okay. Now, you worked for the prosecution in the Zimbabwe legal system from 1983 to 1987. And then you pulled out and started your own practice. Can you explain to us how, your experience at that time?
Well, I worked for the government from 1983 to 1989 as a prosecutor. So I was actually in prosecution during some of the material and problems where there were some excesses. And when I left, it was because obviously I was not very happy with what was going on, because you could see some selective application of the law even then, but it was not as blatant as it is now. And it is a good thing that I worked for the government, because I know how the system works and how it is supposed to work. And it became easier for me to be able to know that this is not being done properly, etc. I have seen over the years basically a complete diminution in the enjoyment of rights by the people of Zimbabwe, where even if you do go to court and get a court order, as you pointed out at the beginning of your program, orders are not always respected, and that becomes a very serious problem. In my own case, a high court ruled that I was entitled to my immediate release, and it didn't happen. And a magistrate who is lower than a high court judge is not that. That shows how the system has completely broken down, so far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Now, we've had an overwhelming yes vote to the recent referendum. What do you think, in your interpretation of this referendum and the outcome, what do you think this would mean for Zimbabwean people?
Well, it means they have a piece of document that will give them rights, but regrettably, I do not think that that means they will enjoy those rights necessarily, because we do have a constitution currently. It does guarantee certain rights, but if those in authority are not prepared to comply with court orders, the document is as good as those who interpret it. So unless there's political will to do things differently, to respect court processes, to abide by decisions of the court, the new constitution is just going to be another piece of paper that says they're entitled to X, Y, Z, but in actual practice, you will not necessarily enjoy the rights that the constitution may give you. So unless there's complete political will to enforce the rights that are enshrined in that constitution that will soon become our new constitution, I mean, for me, I don't see anything changing at all, because the persons who will be interpreting those rights will remain the same. The persons who are supposed to enforce those rights will remain the same. The police who are supposed to comply with certain of those rights will remain the same. And unless there is a sea change in the political will, the new constitution will mean very little for most of us.
Okay, there's been so many reports about security forces obviously interfering with political and civilian affairs, and obviously the United Nations has called for the responsibility to protect citizens. How does this work, in terms of what's going on in Zimbabwe?
Well, for as long as there's more than one center of power, it means we are going to have a problem. As long as there is no separation in the three branches of government, we are going to have a problem. So what we need will be a complete new culture where each branch of government will be able to operate as it is supposed to, where the executive does not tell the judiciary what to do. The judiciary insists on its orders being respected, and where court orders are not complied with, the judiciary should be able to sanction those who refuse to abide by its decisions. So we will need a stronger parliament which will be able to say, when we pass laws, we mean them to be respected, and therefore will be not cowed by the executive. So, we'll need very, very strong oversight institutions manned by very strong persons, and also the three branches of government working to ensure that each branch does not encroach onto the other's functions, particularly in an adverse manner.
Now, we know that obviously this unity government came as a result of SADC's interference, and also coercing the two parties to unite. What kind of assistance or what kind of support have they been giving, and to what level, and what do you think would be the meaning of this support in our future?
Well, yeah, SADC is supposed to be, the midwife to this political arrangement, but I don't know that it's been playing that role to the maximum that was expected of it. Of course, we expect that they should ensure that there's a free and fair election in Zimbabwe. They should ensure that the SADC principles, the minimum guidelines on elections are respected. Mm-hmm. But in the past, we have not seen that happening. We are just hoping that this time round, they'll be able to stick to those principles and, ensure that Zimbabwe sticks to them. I am not particularly hopeful that that is going to happen, because in the past we've seen that the SADC leaders really are just a band of, more like trade union persons who are trying to protect each other's interests than protecting the interests of the citizens of the region.
Right. Now, you've been a victim of, obviously, this violence from the state forces, security forces. And at one point, I remember seeing a picture of you, blue and black. I mean, you actually had your dress hiked up and your butt was really bruised. What do you think in the forthcoming elections, how this violence is going to turn out?
unless SADC and the African Union ensure that there is zero tolerance to political violence, of course we are going to have a violent election. So, I mean, most of the people in Zimbabwe right now fear that elections really translate to violence, and obviously that is going to affect the result of the elections. I mean, people like myself, when we get assaulted, etc., it's not as bad as your ordinary person who's nameless and faceless and will never get their part in a newspaper if it is bruised. The fear there is genuine, it is real, it is life-threatening. So for the majority of persons who are in positions where they could be traumatized by the upcoming elections, it's a life and death situation, and there has to be very, very strong oversight by SADC and the African Union to ensure that the elections at least do not have violent aspects to it.
Okay. Now, what are the challenges that human rights defenders are facing, mostly in Zimbabwe right now? What do you think are the greatest challenges they're facing?
Well, I mean, to start with, there's just over-regulation. You can't do this, you can't do that, and it makes the life of civil society impossible, because if you meant to advocate for certain basic things, and the law or those who interpret it in a way where you are restricted in carrying out your mandate, that clearly immediately becomes a restriction. So it completely negates the very existence of civil society. Then, of course, there's the fear of arrest and raids, etc. We've seen in the last couple of months civil society leaders being arrested, their offices being raided, their homes being raided, and of course the fear factor comes in, because it means civil society activists are not going to discharge their mandates fully because they fear being arrested. But more ominously, when you are threatened with arrest for most civil society activists, the last line of defense, of course, is running to your lawyer. But if the lawyers are themselves getting arrested, it means even that last line of defense is threatened, because most lawyers, if they are called to a scene of a search,
right,
going forward, they'll think, oh God, Beatrice went to a scene of a search and she spent 8 days in prison. I don't want to spend 8 days in prison. And the lawyers will make themselves unavailable. So it will be a free-for-all, really, in terms of ensuring that civil society activists are unable to discharge their mandate.
So can you also talk about the repressive laws? How are journalists able to really express themselves freely and operate in Zimbabwe?
Not just journalists. Everybody has to negotiate their space, because there are so many restrictions. Right. For instance, lawyers are supposed to come and march in solidarity with me when I was in court on Monday. And although they don't police authority, they were then told that you are not allowed to march. And we had riot police right there at the High Court.
Right.
Now, if you have that kind of situation where even lawyers cannot lawfully march right outside the High Court, how do you think a journalist is going to operate? How do you think any other civil society activist will operate? Where the journalist is given a little space to write whatever they need to write or broadcast whatever they need to broadcast, do you seriously think that they will do a proper analysis? Because there'll be the fear that, if I do give the story this twist, I could very well be arrested. So there will be self-censorship. There'll be a failure to interrogate certain basic things that people in the West take for granted, and it means all round we'll all be losers, because we will not even be able to just basically debate going forward that we are having elections. Who is offering what? What is it? What's in it for you if you vote for Mr. X or Mrs. Y?
Wow.
You can't even interrogate.
So given all your past experiences, of course, they've not been very pleasant, because at certain points you have attacked physically and obviously violated and brutalized. So what's the future for you? Are you still going to carry on your works?
I mean, I don't know that I can do anything else. This is my job. I find it incredible that I get called out as a lawyer to defend a citizen who thinks their rights are being interfered with, and someone wants to stop me. It's my job to do that, and I should be allowed to do it. And I don't see why I should be stopped from doing it. Because it's not unlawful. I took an oath that I will do this job, and I don't see why I should stop it. Yeah, sure, I can be arrested and spend 8 days in jail, but that does not change the fact that I'm a lawyer and my job is to do some form of lawyering, and I'm going to continue doing it.
Thank you very much. In fact, we just got a clip of your trailer of a film that actually was made in Harare about your work, and I guess this film is going to be showing sometime soon. And do you have anything to say about that one?
Well, I mean, it's just a documentary about the rule of law in Zimbabwe, yeah, and it will be launched in April at various venues right across the world, and I'm hoping that it will help people understand, particularly as we go through towards the elections, the environment under which human rights defenders operate in Zimbabwe.
Okay. Thank you very much, Beatrice, for coming to our program, and we wish you the best. And also, we wish you complete safety as you execute your duties. Thank you for coming to SaharaTV.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, that was Beatrice Mtetwa. Beatrice Mtetwa is actually an award-winning human rights lawyer from Zimbabwe. She got a Freedom Award from the Community for the Protection of Journalists in 2005. So stay tuned. We'll continue with our programs. Thank you.